We're going to move on to our second document, which this is an image that I took. I was selling some cameras a while back. What we're going to do is we're going to make this image a little more appealing, and we're going to add some effects that could have been done with a camera had I spent a little more time with it. But we're going to do it artificially, but we're going to do it artificially in a way that looks natural, and to the untrained and hopefully the trained eye, you wouldn't know that this image was doctored up in any way in Photoshop. What we want to first do is bring these cameras more into focus. And while we cannot necessarily make the cameras any more in focus or add any more clarification to them or detail without some sort of distortion, we can make things around it less in focus. And one way we could do that is simply grabbing the blur tool and painting on a blur. But it's a destructive editing. We're editing the original layer here, and we can't necessarily go back. We can with the history, but ultimately if we're 20 minutes into this and we decide we want to change something, we're kind of screwed. So instead, let's do this. Let's drag this original layer to the new layer button and create a copy. And we'll rename this layer to out of focus. And what we're going to do is we're going to go to filter, and we're going to add a blur. We're going to do a Gaussian blur. And with this preview checked here, let's go ahead and let's blur this quite a bit. Now this is not how blurred I want to make the final result. However, I want to give myself some leeway to play with. So we're going to say OK. And what we're going to do is turn down the opacity a little bit until we find the desired blur amount. And what this opacity is doing is it's making the layer a little more transparent so that the original is showing through. So let's stick with that for now. And let's go ahead and add a layer mask to our out of focus layer. So there we go. And let's get our paintbrush, and we're going to paint black on here, but we're going to turn our hardness all the way down so we have a very soft brush, and we're going to make our brush a little larger. 300 should do. And let's go ahead and paint on our layer mask where we want things to be focused. And we don't need to be too extremely accurate, because what I want to come in and do is fine-tune it by zooming in here, mainly on these battery packs here and these buttons. And let's go ahead and let's get our brush again and turn our hardness back up to about 90, or maybe let's say 85. That'll just give us a subtle softness around the edges. And let's go ahead and paint some more. And we're just going to bring the clarity up on the battery packs and the buttons. And let's maybe get this strap here. That should be good. Let's zoom out. And I think the back is blurred a little unnaturally. So let's go ahead and click on the layer and bring the opacity down on that blur a little bit more. Maybe to 60. We'll turn off our layers visibility to see where we're at. That's good. Now let's go ahead and we're going to do one more adjustment. One thing that I find very unappealing about this is the monitor here on the camera. The camera I shot this with did not pick up the monitor very well, plus it was aimed at looks like some marker boards in my office building. I don't want that in there. Let's put something more appealing in there. So let's go over here. I've got a picture of another dog of ours. This is Lily. She's a dachshund. A beagle dachshund, that is. And we're going to copy the entire image. So we're going to say Control A and Control C to copy. And let's come back over here. We'll just keep that in the clipboard for a minute. What I want to do is I want to create a group, a layer group. And we'll call this group Monitor. And I want to zoom in here on the monitor and get our polygonal lasso tool. And we're going to create a selection around this monitor here. But I want to go kind of out of it a little bit. And you'll see here, I want to get a little outside the edge. So we have some room to mess with here. And a big reason is you can see this purplish glow here. And that's because of what was in the actual image. And our image is not purple. So it's not going to look right. The purpose for selecting this here is that if you remember from my previous tutorials on adjustment layers and layer masks, when you create a layer mask, well, there's already a selection. Photoshop is going to assume that the everything outside of the selection should be masked out, and that's what we're going to do here now. So let's create a layer mask on the monitor group. And of course, we didn't see anything because there's nothing in the monitor group, but you can see here that our mask is working. Let's go ahead and zoom back out. And what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and paste our picture of Lily that was in the clipboard. And we're going to paste it inside of this monitor group. And let's go ahead. We're going to resize it because it's still a little too big. And we're going to use the free transform tool. So Control T. And you have your center anchor point here. Let's click over here and drag and get that center point kind of in the middle of the monitor. And we're going to come up here to our corner and we're going to hold down Shift to constrain the proportions. And we're also going to hold down Alt so that we zoom from the center, or we resize from the center, that is. And then let's go ahead and start resizing until we get it to about the size that we want. There you go. To make this a little more realistic, as you saw in the original, the monitor is flipped, so is the image. So let's go ahead and flip her around here using the rotate and get her about where we want. Let's hit enter if we're happy. And you might be able to get away with this, but this still, you can see, if you really look closely, you could tell that this was photoshopped in. So let's go over here and in good form, let's name this layer Lily. And what we're going to do is we're going to put an inner shadow on her, so that it gives the appearance that the monitor is, or the image is set inside like the monitor is. We can't simply just put an inner shadow on Lily herself, or this layer here, because this layer is still larger and outside of the mask, and we won't see the effect. So let's come up over here and we're going to load the selection of the mask here. And the way we do this is hold down Control, and you'll see that little marquee picture come up on the icon. And we're going to click on our mask, and that's going to load that selection. And now what we can do is we're going to make a new layer, and we're going to drag this outside of the group. Let's call this shadow. And we're going to use our fill tool, and we're just going to grab whatever color we have. Right now I have a blue. And then let's go ahead and unselect. So now we have an image that's about the same, that is the exact same size as our mask. Let's go ahead and apply the inner shadow to it. So we go down to Layer Styles, click Inner Shadow. And if you've read one of my latest blogs, you'll hear my rant about using layer styles and filters at their default value. I don't want to do that here. we want to kind of tweak this just a little bit to make it realistic to this actual image. Let's come out here and we can actually position the, there we go. And let's say okay. And now you might be saying, well, that's great and all, but what about the image below it? What we can do is, rather than turn the opacity down, which would take away our layer style, we can turn the fill down. And that will only make the objects in this layer transparent. However, the layer styles and effects will still stay present. So let's turn this fill all the way down, and we'll keep our drop shadow. But now that we've done that, I want to change the drop shadow, because I think it could be a little more accurate. So I'm going to come over here and kind of pull it out a little bit, turn the opacity down just a little. So I just want this to be subtle enough to make it look a little more realistic. I'll say okay, and the last thing I want to do to this image, you'll notice that the monitor itself, the whole panel here, is not really in focus very well, which makes this image look a little unrealistic. So let's go in here and we'll apply the same concept we did with the original image, and we'll copy the lily layer and we'll change this to out of focus, and let's apply a blur, a Gaussian blur. And we're just going to make a real subtle blur, something that kind of matches the screen. We'll say okay, and then let's toss a layer mask on here and get our brush tool, turn the hardness all the way down so it's soft, make the brush a little bigger, and we're just going to paint black just a little bit around the face so we can still see it's out of focus a little bit, but we can also get some clarity in there to show off the clarity of the actual image. And maybe there, so there's just a little bit towards the edge here where the camera itself starts to get in focus. But there you have it. I had to fit this into 15 minutes, so there's a lot more tweaking I would probably do before I'd be ready to send this out. But it'd give you an idea of where to start. And definitely you can expand upon what I've just shown you to make it even better.